Eternal Strands is a very interesting take on action-adventure design, and is clearly an example of a game that is greater than the sum of its parts, with a very enjoyable experience if you can look past a little bit of jank here and there. We play as Bryn, who is part of a group known as the Weavers, who have found their ancestral city that has been enclosed in a magical field for years. When they arrive, they have to uncover what has happened to the city, who's still alive, and in my case, burn down everything that I can get my hands on. Eternal Strands mixes designs from several different games. The biggest ones would be action-adventure, and even a touch of Shadow of the Colossus thrown in. Each one of the areas is a massive space filled with enemies, resources, things you can set on fire, and a lot of other things to uncover. The main path through the game will involve you collecting various items, finding notes and clues, and you'll eventually have to stumble upon some of the major bosses that we'll get to in a second. The gear in this one is kept relatively straightforward, but there's a few great touches to it. So you have different weapon types, such as a sword and shield, heavy weapon, bow, and so on. Every armor piece and weapon is crafted back at your home base, and you collect resources off of enemies, treasure chests, and just breaking stuff out in the wild. Every resource belongs to a specific category, such as like cloth or thread, hard mineral or rock, or etc. And as a really fantastic option, once you craft a piece of gear, you can mix and match the various resources to kind of reforge it and change its properties. So if you're going up against something that is more about fire damage, you may want to add more ice resistance to your armor, or increase the damage or lower the weight of your weapon, and so on and so forth. By dealing with enemies in specific ways, you can get more resources from them, and that takes us to the spell system, which that is perhaps the best part of Eternal Strands. The different spells you get access to belong to three categories of ice, flame, and kinetic. And in kind of taking a page from Immersive Sims, you can combine their effects in some very amazing ways. This is the first game I've ever played where you can freeze a giant enemy's leg to stop them from running around and keep them distracted, while you go in and climb on them to get at weak points. You can, once again, set everything and anyone on fire, or, as a backup, just pick up an enemy's annoying you and fling them off a cliff. Fling all the enemies off of cliffs. And it is perhaps the best part of this game, just the level of detail and options you get with these spells. In order to upgrade the spells, you need to fight the game's principal bosses. And this is where the game kind of turns into a quasi-Monster Hunter meets Shadow of the Colossus. Each boss, once you beat them one time, can randomly appear in one of the major areas. The bosses themselves are all designed around having very specific ways of fighting them, and this gets at kind of the perfect kill. You can destroy the enemy's core, which also grants you another strand, aka an upgrade to your magic power, by killing them in a specific way. One enemy may require you to break all of its armor off. Another one may require you to destroy specific parts, maybe stun them in a certain place, etc, etc. And you get the details from this after you beat the boss one time. So it leads into this really great kind of fanatic attack as you try to duck and weave and climb the enemy, trying to hit them in their weak points before they grab you, throw you off, or you run out of stamina. In terms of overall difficulty, Eternal Strands I would say is on the moderate side. You can play this game on normal or hard. Hard simply increases the amount of damage enemies do and lowers your healing potions. It doesn't introduce like new enemy types or things like that. And the story is interesting. It kind of goes, I think it feels like a little bit long near the end of it, but it definitely kept me going from all the way through. Now, like I said at the beginning, there is jank to this game, and it's I think what will stop a lot of people from really exploring what this game has to offer. So, the first point is the melee combat. It ranges between horrible and meh. And meh is the very professional technical term of it. The issue is that enemies are very floaty, and quite literally they will heat seek you from like 20 feet away, including their projectiles or their melee attacks. Your normal attacks, regardless of your weapon, will not cause hit stun, only heavy swings. So it leads into this case where you're trying to awkwardly wait for the enemy to do an attack so you can block, or just keep charging heavy attacks to try and stun lock them. But none of the enemy encounters feel all that engaging to fight, and this again is part and parcel because of the spell system. Why should I try swinging a sword or worry about parrying or blocking when I can just pick up the nearest rock or block or crate and just keep smashing them into the enemy until they die? The best combination I've found is basically freeze them with Ice Wall, go in for a heavy strike, freeze them again, go in for the heavy strike, rinse and repeat. The different boss class enemies are all very well done, but they're also very linear. Once you know the exact pattern to fight them, it's just a matter of repeating that over and over again. I would love to have seen some variations or mutations on the different enemies to give them a little bit more diversity of their fighting. The gear system, while I like the whole reforging element, is still kept very simplistic. You'll find different gear pieces as you play through the game, and they'll have a special bonus. Maybe this one will give you more max armor, more fire resist, and so on. But it doesn't really lead to a lot of interesting decisions. Just take whatever piece you're going for, have the highest armor value, lowest weight, and you're kind of off to the races. The only exceptions are when you're dealing with heavy ice or heavy flame, where you'll probably need to mix and match parts in order to raise that respective resistance up. And the general questing is okay, but if you're hoping for really creative uses, or the game demanding that you learn the spell system, it doesn't quite, I think, know what to do with all these abilities. I had a lot of fun mixing and using the different abilities and spells in a variety of combinations. So the game gives you a tip that you can use fire on any water to create steam that blocks vision. That's a really nifty ability and effect. But there's never a point in the game that's actually going to serve a purpose. And I kind of feel like this game is being torn between two masters, of wanting to be more kind of action, adventure, hack and slash, Monster Hunter oriented, and just letting me cut loose with all this magic, and who cares about sneaking around while you just toss flaming boulders or freeze everything around me. And I would love to see a sequel really embellish and explore the spell system. Give me more crazy combinations. Just let me just use more spells instead of swords. And as a final complaint, the grappling around enemies felt very awkward at times. When you're fighting enemies who can kind of grab you off of them, their hands seem to be this kind of magnet that attaches to you. And I had cases where I just could not dodge or get out of the way. The character either didn't respond to me mashing the let go of the enemy button, or even if I dodge out of the way, the hand, even though it's not touching me, I get automatically pulled into it and then suffer the attack. And there doesn't seem to be any way to increase your stamina. You can lower your weight, which reduces kind of your stamina drain, but there are some places where it just felt like I didn't have enough stamina to really do much on the enemy before I had to fall off. And it's unfortunate that I think the kind of limitations in the melee combat and just general exploration and that kind of thing is probably going to stop a lot of people from really getting into this one. As I said, if you can look past these points, I think there is a very underrated and fantastic core to Eternal Strands, and in a way this reminds me of Remnant. That the first Remnant, I enjoyed it warts and all, and then the sequel really improved on almost every complaint from that first game. And I hope that the developers here get a chance to do a sequel, because I really want to see them explore this element more. I want Monster Hunter meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. Let me fight giant monsters by throwing flaming ice rocks and propelling myself using force portals all around the arena. So with that said, I definitely recommend Eternal Strands if you're looking for a very different take, but if you're hoping again for a pure action adventure game, or one that is going to be more combat focused or story driven, this is probably not going to be it. But I think this game is going to end up on a lot of people's underrated lists for 2025. And with that, Eternal Strands was played with a press key provided by the publisher. Let me tackle your game in the future. While it doesn't have to involve setting everything on fire, I would greatly appreciate that as an option. Let me know what you think about this one down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and see everyone in the next video. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and if you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.